So recently, with the media focusing on inflation, price level, all these scary CPI, core PCE, all these terms, I've wanted to clear up a few things. This is going to be a relatively short video, but I think you're going to find it incredibly useful. So this is where the economists, everybody, they get the term of price level, and this is probably the main model where price level comes in. So we have a few curves here. This orange one is aggregate demand. So they would call that all of the demand for goods and services in the economy. So including investment, government spending, consumption, and then exports minus imports. That's going to be aggregate demand. And then short run aggregate supply is going to be slightly elastic to price level, but just slightly curved. And then here we have long run aggregate supply. It's not really clear when the Keynesians talk about these things, because this is a very Keynesian idea, which I do not agree with, is what the difference between these two things is. So the Keynesians pretty much just use short run and long run to further their own agenda. When you look at short run, everything's in the short run if it supports their policies, and it's in the long run if it doesn't, essentially. Like Keynes said, everyone's dead in the long run, so it doesn't really help us then. So, but anyways, I digress. Let's say here this situation, this is COVID, whatever. We have short run aggregate supply and aggregate demand at the intersection point with long run aggregate supply. So we're in equilibrium. Everything's great. Boom, COVID. Short run aggregate supply decreases. So that's a decrease in real GDP, and then the price level increases. So that's what we're supposedly at right now. And then let's say the Keynesians would say, oh no, our real GDP is lower. We have to bump up aggregate demand. So that's where they would say, load on the stimulus programs, baby. Here we go, and increase aggregate demand and bring real GDP up. But you can see, what's this big gap here if you brought aggregate demand crossing over long run supply here? This would actually lead us to a very massive increase in price level. And now, what is price level here? Price level is the aggregate prices of the entire economy. So if that doesn't make sense to you, don't worry, you're not alone. So this is to put some substance to what I was saying in that model there, which I don't agree with and which I think is faulty. This is CPI. This is a number that you see reported pretty regularly. Recently, we've been having some pretty high CPI prints, so above 5% even, which is the highest since like the 1990s. So that's pretty crazy sounding. Like, oh my, CPI and 5%, wow. And this isn't getting into any of the other issues with CPI, quality improvements, the scam that is, all the other problems. This is just base problems with the term inflation and price level for describing aggregate things in the economy. So you look at CPI. Oh, okay, inflation's been low. It's been going up. But really, I'm saying this is a faulty way to think about inflation. Prices don't move together. They move independently of each other for the most part. So if you look at the price of, say, oil, that moves fairly independently to the price for a medical procedure. And those are all components of inflation. Or say the price of tuition at a college or university. All those things. They move independently of each other, and we're going to see that in this graph. So this is the graph I was talking about. I would encourage you to check it out. Just look up like U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, CPI, and you'll eventually get here. I'm sure of it. So I like this one because you can sort of see, okay, where is the inflation coming from? This aggregate price level change that we hear about, that it's the same thing as inflation, an increase in aggregate prices, inflation. So, okay, so what's increasing? Here we have percentage on the left, 5, 10, 15, you get it. And then we have items here and how much they increased. So you can see that energy was up 24% year over year. And food was up 2.4%. Other categories up 4.5%. And then the cool thing about this is we can click on it. And we can we click on it? Yeah, there we go. we can click on it and we can get more information. So energy commodities were up 44%. We see that crude oil, natural gas, etc. Energy services up 6%. So you might, okay, that doesn't look as big, but that's still 6%. That's quite substantial in terms of inflation when the Fed is targeting 2% inflation or average 2%, whatever that means. So then we can see even more inflation, all of them over 2%. So you might think, well, it seems like everything's going up. Like, what's the big deal? Just call it inflation. Wrong. Here's why. You have something okay, commodities, less food and energy. Services, less energy services. Let's click down here. Medical care. Okay, so that was up 1%, whereas the energy sector of CPI was up 24. Does it seem like a good idea to you to group those in the same thing and call it inflation? Just, okay, we'll mix it into a basket, weight it by the amount an average person uses, even though there is no average person, and you are not the average person, and likely you're a lot different than the average person. Weight it into the average person, subtract out quality improvements, all these things to make it look like there's less inflation or price changes, and then compute one number. And so you see this one number, and it's practically meaningless by the time it goes through all these processes. Like, of course, if there's hyperinflation, everything's increasing massively in price. Yeah, it's going to capture that. But from the month-to-month inflation, it's not really doing you any good to see this one number that says, oh, you saw 5% inflation. It doesn't mean anything. You got to look at the individual goods and services. So food at home, food away from home. Just looking at these things, familiarizing yourself with how they interact with each other and what this actually means. And you'll find that the way that the financial media reports inflation, the inflation boogeyman, it's pretty laughable. If you do your own research, you can really come up with a better understanding for how things work. Yeah, so I got a little heated this video, but thanks for watching. Hope you took something away. Thanks.